because you're too worried about what you think other people think about you. And you don't want them to judge you. But here's what I know about them. And here's what I know about you. It doesn't matter what you say, they're going to judge you anyway. What if I told you that your biggest problem in your quest for success is small? And it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, boy or girl, black or white, rich or poor, entrepreneur or employee, your biggest problem in your success quest is very, very small. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about this concept. Why big thinking, or why thinking big, is the missing piece in your success puzzle. I've coached a lot of entrepreneurs. And I've seen some people who've had billion-dollar businesses in their hands. And they barely eke out hundreds of thousands of dollars. And for decades, I've asked, why? Why is this person who has this much opportunity right in front of them, they have this much skill set, like the marketplace is ripe for the thing that they have, and yet they're only making a couple $100,000 a year. Now, and I get it, like a couple $100,000 a year. How many of you honestly, and for those of you on YouTube, you can just type me in the chat or in the comments. But how many of you in this room honestly would say, like, when I think about hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, that does not seem very small to me. Wave at me, my peeps. That doesn't seem very small. Right. But I submit to you that that's your problem.
Doesn't.
Because, like, small to you seems big. And big seems impossible. And so, since big is impossible, you don't even try. Like, you give up before you get started. And I'm not fussing at y'all. I'm just telling you, like, I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. I see this all the time. I see people with businesses and they're eking out like a meager existence. I'm thinking, what is with the struggle fest? And the reality is, I can't think any bigger than this. And then I see people who have what from my perception seems like a terrible idea, a terrible business model. It's like, I would never build a business around it, and they're making a fortune. I mean, millions off of what to me seems like a terrible idea. And the reason they're doing it is because their ability to think big around their concept, their business model, their market, their pricing, their ability to think big around those things is greater than the person with a better idea's ability to think big around their great thing that they have. I mean, imagine you're the children of Israel, you're slaves in a foreign land. And imagine the king that you're a slave to is the mightiest king on earth. And imagine God frees you from this king and transfers all of that nation's wealth to you. He opens the Red Sea. You march across on dry ground. You send spies into the promised land. 12 spies, 10 of them come back with bad news, 2 of them come back with great news. The 10 that came back with bad news said, yeah, the land flows with milk and honey, and yes, the grapes are as big as your head, but the giants are so big, we are as grasshoppers in their sight. No, you're not as grasshoppers in their sight, you're as grasshoppers in your own sight. And Joshua and Caleb said, yeah, the giants are big, but God is bigger. And see, your problem, I promise you, the biggest problem you have on your success quest is your inability to allow yourself over a sustained period of time to think bigger. Because I was thinking about it. I was like, how in the world, how in the world, me, little old Myron, how in the world am I doing all this? And I'm not flexing. I'm going to be honest with you. I remember in the 10th grade, I went to see my guidance counselor, Mr. Schmitz, William Penn High School. He gave me a prophecy on my life. He said, son, you are going to jail. Right? My report cards would have told you that I'm not smart. My guidance counselor told me I was going to jail. When I graduated from high school, I got the most likely to get on your nerves award. And here I am. And if our business on average generates less than $30,000 in a day, it wasn't a very profitable day. 365 days a year for years and years on end. By the way, that's not a lot of money. It is a lot of money. I'm not saying it's not a lot of money. I'm saying I can't afford, if I'm on a quest to maximize my potential in every area of my life, to think that I'm making a lot of money. It's not about me making you think that I don't think that's a lot of money. I don't really care what you think about that being a lot of money. You can think it's a lot of money if you want to. I can't afford to think that. Why? Because if I do, then I'll get complacent. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but how much is enough, Myron? It doesn't have anything to do with it. Like I have plenty enough right now to never have to work another day in my life. I don't need to be here right now. I'm not doing this because I need the money. So if I don't need the money and I don't need to do it, see, here's what thinking small does. Thinking small makes people say, well, when I get X amount of dollars, then I can stop working. Which shows you, me, and the world that you don't even understand the purpose of work. And so I'm going to answer the question, how much is enough? Because somebody in my family said to me one time, when I told him how good my business was doing, and it wasn't doing anywhere near as good then as it's doing now. It's like, well, how much money do you need to make, Myron? How much money do you want to make, Myron? I said, as much as I can. You know what he said to me? He said, surely you can't mean that. I said, surely I do. I said, now, if you said it, you might not mean it, but if I said it, you can take it to the bank. I want to make as much money as I possibly can. And I know there are people who are watching me on YouTube right now who you're going to think, oh my goodness, that's such a terrible thing to say. I get it. You're confused, but that's okay. I'm going to allow you to be confused. I'm not confused. And I'm not running for office, so I don't have to give you an answer that's acceptable to you. This is what's going on in my head. I don't need anybody to think anything about me. I want to make as much money as I possibly can. And I asked him, I said, how much money do you want to make? He said, not that much. I'm not that greedy. See, which is fine. No, that's fine. That's fine. But here's the problem with that. That's part of your small thinking mechanism. And that's how you protect yourself from being the best you can be. So if I asked you this question, how long do you want to live? You wouldn't say not that long, just long enough to be comfortable. Would you? Who would say that? How healthy do you want to be? I don't want to be that healthy, just healthy enough to be comfortable. Nobody would say that. It sounds so ridiculous, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound ridiculous? How smart would you like your children to be? Nah, not that smart. Just smart enough to be comfortable. How good do you want your relationships to be? I don't want them to be that good. Just good enough to be comfortable. We don't say that about any other area of our lives other than money. Why? Is that a good question? Why is money the only arena in our lives where we set a limit to just enough to be comfortable? You want to max out every other area of your life, but the money, I don't want to. You know why? Because you're too worried about what you think other people think about you. And you don't want them to judge you. But here's what I know about them. And here's what I know about you. It doesn't matter what you say, they're going to judge you anyway. I wish I had some helping hand. And since they're going to judge you anyway, you might as well just go ahead and live your life. Like I don't have time. Somebody here, so I'm sure somebody will put a comment in here. But the Bible says that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. It does say that. But that's not all it says. And whatever that means, it doesn't contradict the rest of the entire Bible. Whatever it means. It doesn't contradict the blessing of the Lord that maketh rich and hath no sorrow with it. Doesn't contradict that. So how do those two verses coexist in the same text? Here's how they coexist. They coexist in the same text by reading and studying them in context. What does that mean? I got to look at the verses before it and the verses after it, and I got to look up the definition of all the words in the verses so that I can understand that when the Bible says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, it's talking about an actual camel and an actual needle. But the key word in that verse is the word rich. But instead of me teaching that part to you right now, I'll say, go watch my video on the camel and the eye of the needle and explain it to you perfectly. One of these days, in the very near future, I'm going to do a video on the fact the Bible teaches the love of money is the root of all evil. And I mean, these are misunderstood passages in scripture because people lift the verses out of the context in which they were written, and then they attempt to understand them. You cannot understand them apart from the context. It means those verses are in there and they're true, but they're not telling us all of a sudden that God wants us to be broke. Yeah, I'm going to bless you, but I want you to be broke. God's not bipolar just because we are. Okay. So, when you think small, you only see small opportunities. And you only take advantage of small opportunities. And by the way, here's our process. Here's our process. When we think small, what we do is, the first thing we do is we look at a situation and we say, can I? And when I say can I might be saying, can I afford it? I might be saying, like, can I do it? Like, do I have the ability to do it? Like, can I capability-wise? Like, can I? This is what small thinking says, can I? And then when you ask this question, what do you have to find? You ask the question to find what? An answer. And then most people come back. If the thing looks bigger than you, you say, I can't. Small thinking. Big thinking. How? Again, how can I? Big thinking just asks better questions. Guess what happens when you say, how can I? Then you start making a list. Well, I could do this, or I could do that, I could do that, I could do this, I could do this. You have to learn to put up a fight against the small thinking sabotage mechanism in your mind that talks you out of all your chances. Yeah. Is this helping anybody besides me? So you, instead of saying, well, can I afford it? Can I do it in the amount of time I have left? Can I do it? Will people accept me? Can I do it? Will people judge me? Can I do it? Will people laugh at me if I say this one? No, just how can I do it? How can I? 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 Okay, how can I? How can I afford it? Okay, how can I make the time? How can I find the people that I can partner with? How can I? I ask better questions, I get better answers. But the only way to get better answers is to ask better questions. How many of y'all tracking?
Oh, yes.
And so small thinking is, so what happens, you only see small opportunities. And when you only see small opportunities, then you look at, in fact, I'm going to go to another page. So here's what happens when I only see small opportunities. I look at me in the mirror, and then I think of me as small. I won't say that out loud, but it's how I feel, right? And how can you tell if you think you're small? When you look at something and you think it's too big for you, then you think you're small. When you look at something, and you say, well, I can't do that because I don't know how to, blah, blah, blah. And you say that as if that statement of current fact is eternal. Like, you didn't know how to walk when you landed on this planet, but you figured it out. Couldn't talk either. Count, read, drive, ride a bike. Look at all this. I always tell people, if you want proof that there's nothing you can't learn, Just look in the rearview mirror of your life at all the things you've already learned. And that should let you know there's nothing you can't learn. Because whatever the thing is you're facing, you've already learned how to do a whole lot of other stuff that's way harder than that. Especially living in the age we live in now, where there's all this technology to help you figure it out. Is what I'm saying making sense? And so you look at yourself, you look at me, I'm small, and then you look at the market, and the market's small. So there are all these people in this market, and you're like, the market's just not that big. There aren't that many people who want it. And so before you even write the book, create the course, launch the software, create the membership site, whatever, you build your YouTube channel, your Instagram profile, your TikTok following, your TikTok shop, your Amazon influencer account, before you take advantage of all of these opportunities that we have available today, because there's never been a time in human history where it's been easier to create wealth than right now. But it doesn't feel like it, because the cultural hypnotic societal mechanism has programmed you to believe that you are smaller than all your chances. And so you look at the market, well, the market's not that big. I started out in what you would think is a small market. Like when I started training, the only thing I knew was network marketing and sales. So I started training network marketers. And I thought I thought I was making big money. Like I'd go do a seminar for some network marketers and I'd make $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on a Saturday morning teaching network marketers how to do network marketing. Now, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. And then sometimes then I'd started teaching people how to sell. And I made even more money. And so I wrote a book and I'd sell lots of books. And once I figured out how to sell lots of books, I started teaching people how to write books and sell books. And I'd develop a skill, and then I'd figure out how to do it, and then I'd create a course to teach other people how to do it, and I'd sell it to people, and guess what I discovered? There's a big market. But guess what? I knew there was a big market of people with small amounts of money. But because my thinking was small, my income, though it was big, was smaller than it needed to be, because my prices were small, because the only people that I could perceive in the marketplace were people who could afford a $500 course. See, that hit you, didn't it? And see, so the average person would look out and say, well, it's this way. No, it's not that way. You're that way. And I know, because I used to be that way. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. And so when I look at the opportunities don't look that large, that immense, because like if it was immense, it'd be obviously for somebody other than me. How could that immense opportunity be for me? You know what happened? I had a breakthrough. I went to a Robert Allen wealth retreat, and I had already read a bunch of his books, Multiple Streams of Internet Income, The 1 Minute Millionaire. I had already interviewed him for his 1 Minute Millionaire book for my newspaper that I launched. I launched a newspaper that it was so crazy. A 4-page newspaper, made me so much money. I'll tell you that story in a minute. So I'm at Robert Allen's wealth retreat, and he says, hey, does anybody have a testimonial? I go up, yeah, I've got a testimonial. Like, yeah. He calls me up on stage. I'm like, yeah, man, I read your book, Multiple Streams of Income. I listened to your 6 CD series called Infopreneuring, and I did all the stuff you said. He said, and I said, my expenses are only like $5,000 a month, and I make $30,000 a month, and I live like a king. You know what he said? He said, wow, you're on the verge of a breakthrough. You're about to break through to really big money. And I'm on stage in front of 700 people. And I thought to myself, did he just diss my $30,000 a month in front of 700 people? That was my first thought. That was my first small thinking thought. My second small thinking thought was, wait, there's a level where $30,000 a month is not that much money? That would have never occurred to me had that not happened. Are y'all tracking? Well, I had something happen like that recently to me again. Right? I remember my wife and I, we went to see we were having dinner with my wife's brother's in-laws, his father-in-law, mother-in-law, and they were in the cattle business. They were like, yeah, we bought these cows for $5,000, and they had calves, and then we took them to the market and we sold them for $7,000. And they were talking about $5,000 and $7,000. This is way back in the day. This is back in the 90s, back before the $20,000 a month ever entered my brain, right? And they were talking about $5,000 like it was $5. And when we left, I said, did you notice how they were talking about $5,000 like it was $5? She's like, yeah. I was like, oh. And so it made me realize there are levels to this game. And see, a lot of times what happens when people who are a little bit further than you on their financial journey, when they're talking about numbers that are just normal numbers to them, you think they're flexing. When they're just experiencing life the way they're experiencing life. Like to me, I've got students that we've helped have $1 million days. So to me, $1 million in a day is not flex. There's nothing flex about. I mean, 5 million, okay, maybe a little flexish, right? But it's a different way of thinking. When you expose yourself to people who think bigger, their big thinking is one of the only ways that you can see how small your thinking has been. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So you see your market is small, and then you see the money is small. What does that mean? Well, you think the market's small, there's only a handful of people in this market, and they can only afford a little bit of money. So you don't even put a dollar sign, you just put a cent sign. They can't afford that much money, so I only charge them a little bit of money. So little old me goes to my little old market, I charge a little bit of money, and I wonder why I can't get ahead. The reason you can't get ahead, the reason you're struggling on your success quest is because your thinking is too small. By the way, thinking big, like thinking 100 times bigger than you think right now, doesn't cost 100 times more. It costs the same amount of energy. You just have to break the programming that the cultural hypnotic societal mechanism put on you so they can keep their thumb on you your whole life. Okay, cool. So y'all get that. So when you think small, you only see small opportunities, and then you only speak about small opportunities. So when you talk about small opportunities. So here's what we have to understand. Our words are not just a communication tool. Our words are the window through which we see the world. And so if you talk small about small things, then it blinds you to the bigger opportunities. You understand what I'm saying? And so I'm glad that I got exposed to Bill Travis in 1985, who was this jovial old man with a white beard. It's funny because now I'm a jovial, seasoned man with a white beard. Okay, anyway, so I got exposed to Bill Travis in 1985, and he was making $10,000 a month in 1985. And I was like, if this dude's making $10,000 a month, I know I'm fixed to get rich. And then I got exposed to my man Ben Ginder in 1995 in this network marketing company, and he had been in it for a couple of months, and he was making $60,000. I probably shouldn't have said his last name, but back then he makes more than that. So he was making $60,000 a month. Like, and I saw the checks, so I knew he was making. This was not theory. It was like check flex in multi-level marketing, right? Check flex. This is how you recruit people. Check flex. And so I'm like, if this guy who grew up on a farm, an Amish farm in Pennsylvania, is making $60,000 a month, I know I'm going to get rich. He's one of my dearest friends, one of my best friends, one of my best mentors ever. Anyway, I was in his organization. He would go with me to different places around the country, actually around the world, and we'd go recruit people for my organization. And just watching him operate was different, right? And so you only see small opportunities. And you only speak small. And Ben didn't speak small. Ben lives large. Like, I mean, and he would let me drive his fanciful cars. He'd let me drive his Lamborghini. He let me drive his Aston Martin and his Ferrari. He's like, man, are you going to go or what? I'm like, Ben, I'm already going like 120. Like, come on, man, let's go. I'm like, what are we doing here, bro? Anyway, I was young and dumb. I don't do that anymore. We were both younger and dumber then than we are now. And I remember one time when we were in Jacksonville, Florida, Ben came to Jacksonville, and we were going to do an event, and he was going to do an event with me. And he got to my house, and he came in his Rolls Royce or his Bentley, or his Rolls Royce or his Bentley. I don't remember which one. It was probably his Bentley. I don't remember. Anyway, so he's at my house. It's time for me to pick up my kids to school. I said, I got to get my kids from school. He said, well, let's go. And so he rolls up in his Bentley and picks up my kids from school. this is the coolest thing ever. And just being exposed to people who think bigger changed my life in ways that I didn't think about until I started thinking about it now, right? And so I stopped talking about small things. I mean, to the point where I loathe small talk. Like, I hate it. It's like, small talk for me is like fingernails on a chalkboard. I don't want to talk about what happened in the news. I can't do anything about it. But Myron, how will you know what's going on in the world? I got a good question for you. That's a good question. Let me ask you a better question. You can't fix what's going on in your world. What are you going to do about the problems going on in the B world? Why are you watching the bad news? Why would you fill your mind with a bunch of problems that you have no ability to solve, that rob your brain power of the energy to solve the problems you can solve? Read the paper? Watch the news? For what? That's time you could be learning a new skill. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. So being around people who think bigger causes you to think bigger. And so I recently I've got this new friend. He's a billionaire, and I'm not going to say his name. And we're having a conversation. And well, the first time I ever met him, he had this conversation, and he talked about how he got a government contract in New York. And with that government contract, he made like $400 million in 2 weeks. I'm like, I know it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. Dog, boy, why you got to do that to me? Right? Why you got to come out like that? I'm like, I've never made $400 million in 2 weeks, but now at least I know someone who has, which means, if my dad was right, if they can do it, you can do it. So this guy took a liking to me, and I took a liking to him. He's a really nice guy, and I'm fairly nice sometimes. And so he came to Tampa. We spent the day together, and he just like peeled back the curtains. And a couple of things he said to me made me realize how small my big thinking was. And he said, Myron, my family's business did $37 billion last year. And he said, so when he came to Tampa, I chartered a yacht. We sailed from Tampa to St. Pete, ate lunch at Dock Ford's, sailed back. On the way there, he told me his story. On the way back, I told him mine. And he said, I haven't paid taxes since 2001. He said, and we don't break any of the rules. We just use the rules that were made in our favor. I'm like, sign me up for a whole bunch of that right there. And then on the way back, I told him my story. Here's what he said to me. He said, Myron, you're doing really, really good. Your story is amazing. But you could do so much better. Bring it. Bring it. Here's what he said. He said, if you do what I tell you to do, you should be able to accumulate $300 million worth of real estate in the next 6 months. Now, I'm a big thinker. $300 million, Tim? And I'm like, I'm going to get $300 million. That's my first little squeaky voice, self-sabotaging, small thinking brain coming out. Where you get $300 million? And the beautiful part is, it doesn't matter. One of the biggest things that keeps people in small thinking is asking, how do I do this? Instead of deciding, I'm going to do this. Because some, like big things, sometimes you don't get to see the whole picture up front. You only get to see the first step. And you only get to see the second step after you take the first step. So I'm studying all the stuff he showed me. Then I went to Miami and spent the day with him again. So if you only see small opportunities and you only speak about small opportunities, because I see some people's businesses. I've got one client and she's one of the hardest. She does really well with her money. She makes millions of dollars a year, but she's always working. She's always on call, always on the phone. I'm like, I don't want to make money that bad. I don't personally. I don't like I'm not on around the clock. I'm on when I'm on, and when I'm off, leave me alone. Keeping it real. And one of the reasons she works all the time is because all of her prices are low. Her prices are too low. So when you only see small opportunities, you only speak about small opportunities, then you can only seize small opportunities. And one of the reasons, I promise, one of the reasons you're struggling right now is because you are thinking too small. And exposing yourself to people who think bigger so that you can start to exercise your atrophied big thinking muscles is one of the most important things you can do. More important than learning how to do a thing is learning how to become the person who can do it. Because if you learn how to become the person who can do it, you will figure out the how. How many of y'all tracking? Wave at me. And that's why I say small is your biggest problem. And big thinking is the missing piece to your success puzzle. So now that you know what the piece is, here's my question for you. Are you going to put the puzzle together? Or are you just going to sit there and look at the box? Thanks for watching. I hope this video helps you. Stay blessed by the best, and we'll see you in the next video.